Hey there, this is Phil. Welcome back to the show. I am here with Sky Jitani.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Sky. And where's Christian?
Not here.
What happened to Christian? What'd you do to Christian?
I didn't do anything. I think she's at a lacrosse camp.
Is that what it was?
Thing.
Is that what something came up? Because we thought she would be here, and then she last minute said, "I can't. I have something. I can't make it."
She's like the Holy Spirit. You don't know where she's coming from or where she's going.
Are you saying sometimes the Holy Spirit lets you down?
I'm saying...
Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying the Holy Spirit can be unpredictable.
We really thought the Holy Spirit was going to come through for us here. Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Fisher podcast starts right here. Oh, we'll talk to Sky.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Sky. But Christian's gone, so we got Jo Saxton to sing along. You gonna sing along?
Laugh.
Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Fisher podcast starts right here. The Phil Fisher podcast starts right here.
I gotta tell you, Phil. Just before
What?
This,
what do you gotta
I
tell me?
recorded an interview with Russell Moore.
Yeah,
and he
doesn't play the ukulele.
Well, he
as I do.
expressed disappointment that he couldn't introduce me with the ukulele.
Okay,
I thanked him for not introducing me with the ukulele, and then he kind of gave me a hard time about.
I bet he did.
I need to ease up on the ukulele critique.
I think that sentiment is shared by most Americans.
Yeah. So, anyway,
That-
he is your defender.
Thank you. Well, he's a defender of the faith, and I kind of represent the faith.
Oh, what are you, the queen all of a sudden?
Well, Veggie Tales and stuff, and I explain the faith to children. I'm Mr. Rogers of Christianity.
Ooh.
I'm just going to
I think Mr. Rogers is the Mr. Rogers of Christianity.
Oh, yeah, okay, there's that. But he never pulled out his Bible on the show. Never.
Okay.
Not once. Maybe he did
Maybe
once.
he was doing the St. Francis thing.
Yeah, maybe he was doing the St. Francis. Well, what's the alternative to the St. Francis thing? The Billy Graham thing?
Maybe.
If he's the St. Francis of Christianity, Mr. Rogers, I'm the Billy Graham of Christianity, Mr. Rogers.
I think there's too many convoluted layers.
Am I stacking
I'm
my
really
mess?
confused now.
Jo Saxton is here. You remember Jo? She was with us a few months ago. I don't know how long ago. Do you know how long ago it was?
3 months, 4 months.
Okay, yeah. Right before your career really took off from the exposure on the Phil Fisher podcast.
Changed my life,
Yeah,
Phil.
right.
Changed it.
I'm glad I can help. Jo is the chair of the board of 3D Movements, a nonprofit organization that seeks to change the world by putting discipleship and mission back in the hands of ordinary people, not experts like Sky. That's her point. Enough of these experts like Sky that are controlling.
I'm not an expert.
Oh, you are not an expert.
I don't claim to be the
you're writing
Will
books.
Rogers of Christianity or whatever you would say you are.
Mr. Rogers.
Whatever.
Will Rogers is funnier than Mr. Rogers. She's also a leadership coach and a consultant. She's the author of More Than Enchanting, Breaking Through Barriers to Influence Your World. And she's from the UK, but she lives in Minneapolis, and is your husband a pastor?
He was.
Oh,
yeah.
he was. Oh, did something bad happen?
Yeah, not really. He's in marketing now.
Oh.
He was an engineer, then he was a pastor, now he's in marketing.
Oh.
It's just our normal.
Yeah, I guess that's how it works nowadays. Engineering, pastor, marketing. Okay, I have a couple of news stories. And the first one I really, really like because I'm skeptical about us humans living in space. I know it's come up like going to Mars. We're going to live on Mars. No, we're not.
Just Matt Damon.
It's a terrible place. You're probably not going to live on Mars.
But you can grow potatoes in your poop there.
You can grow potatoes in your poop. Remember that children's song from Mr. Rogers? When I think it was Mr. McFeely, they would grow potatoes.
I think it sounds like the Eastern European Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Space travel. So I've been skeptical about space travel.
Yes, you have.
I have been a skeptic. that we're going to find aliens, that we're going to live on Mars someday. And I believe the space travel community is overly emotional about it. It's not logic driven. It's emotional. And it's basically because they all grew up thinking that someday Star Trek would be true.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
And they can't let go of that.
They can't let go of
They can't let go. So they're hopeless romantics.
Okay.
I would say.
And you think that's a bad thing?
I think
we need a couple people like that around.
I think it has the potential to waste a lot of resources.
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
I mean, if they're private people like Richard Branson, they're spending their own money, or SpaceX with Elon Musk.
What about the Swedish show that's trying to put people in a colony on Mars, and so they're doing a reality TV show to have people volunteer to go one way, to get a one-way ticket to Mars?
I think
Isn't that a little ridiculous?
It is ridiculous, but I don't really care as long as they're not using my tax money.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just Survivor on a slightly different scale?
Right.
Okay.
So what's your beef now? What's the story?
Space travel leads to two-headed worm. That's the headline.
That sounds like a sequel to Alien.
I know, exactly. Okay, January 2015, researchers sealed up a bunch of planarium flatworms in tubes. Planarium flatworms. Are you with me?
You're putting flatworms into tubes.
Yes, that's where it starts.
Okay.
That's always where it starts. It starts so innocently. Let me just put these flatworms in tubes filled with half water and half air and launch them up to the International Space Station. So they were astroworms.
Okay.
What's more,
sounds like a cartoon series.
half of the flatworms had parts of their body sliced off.
On purpose?
Yes.
Before they were put in the tubes?
Yes. Because planarium flatworms can regenerate.
So they were going to test to see how they regenerated in zero
How will this
gravity.
go? How will they regenerate in space? Now, that's not usually a problem for the planarium flatworms, as they have the remarkable ability to regenerate their bodies in the face of such an event, which is why they're so often studied. Meanwhile, another group of worms received the same treatment, but were left here on Earth. Hack off parts of their body. Hack.
They were the control worms.
They were control worms. You have the astroworms and the control worms.
So far, so good.
The worms were kept in space for 5 weeks and then returned for analysis. The most striking finding was that one of the amputated worms grew back a head at each end.
Only one out of how many?
It didn't say.
See, that's important.
What's more, when those heads were sliced off, because the scientists just love slicing heads off.
This is like a Greek tragedy.
It is. The worm was able to regenerate each head again, showing that its physiology had been permanently changed.
This is like the Fantastic Four, where they go into space and they come back with all these mutant abilities.
Yes, and they said, this is what the scientists said, in more than 18 person years, that means 18 people working on it for a year, I guess, of maintaining a colony of flatworms that involved more than 15,000 control worms, the Tufts researchers have never observed a spontaneous occurrence of double-headedness.
So 1 out of 15,000 worms.
Not in space. 15,000 worms on Earth that they've studied in total.
Okay.
And then they send a small group of worms up to space, and one of them comes back with two heads.
Only the smartest, most...
Two heads. In addition to finding the double-headed mutation, the researchers also found that the space worms underwent spontaneous fission, in which they split their bodies up to create two or more identical worms. This did not happen with the worms that stayed home alone. Furthermore, the astronaut worms also had a strange reaction to fresh spring water when researchers placed them in it when they returned. Unlike the worms that stayed behind, they became partially paralyzed from fresh spring water, immobile and curled up in their petri dishes, humming Disney songs quietly to themselves before returning to normal in about 2 hours.
So they had trouble acclimating back to normal water.
They couldn't handle spring water anymore because they were in space. And they grew two heads, and some of them spontaneously split into two different worms. That's what will happen to us if we go to space. We can't go to space. Terrible, terrible things will happen. See, we got two different visions of space. One is Star Trek. The other is Alien.
Okay.
You know, and we repeat those.
There's bad things that
again.
happen in Star Trek.
Yeah, but Kirk's always okay.
Okay.
Kirk, and we all see ourselves as Kirk.
So you're
we're
siding
always
on the
okay.
alien.
We don't see ourselves as ensign number 5.
You think it's going to go like Alien?
Well, I think this proves it's going to go like Alien.
Well, if you're a flatworm.
I think this is proof that space messes with you in ways we can't even predict. Well, and you want to get locked in with like 5 other flatworm buddies for a trip to Mars? Who knows what they're going to be when you get there?
I think we've proven, though, that whenever you take an organism out of its indigenous environment and put it in a different environment, things go badly. Like when humans...
Like when I have to be with people?
Yes. When humans went deep into the sea, and then they came up and they got the bends, and they didn't know. Like when they were building the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah,
you know that story.
They built a bridge.
Well, they had to dig down deep with these caissons under the water.
And they found flatworms.
And they started getting they didn't know what it was, but it was the bends.
They got the bends and lots of people, Brooklyn Bridge bends?
Yes. So we were never meant to exist that far down below water. And
and we weren't meant to live in space.
Exactly. So but the point is, don't go there. The point is, if you go there, you need to be careful, and you need to figure out all the things you need to sustain.
Don't let a scientist cut off your head before you go there, because you'll grow 2 heads, and one of them will be in your butt.
Did you hear about...
I think that's what happened to the flatworms.
Did you hear about the 2-headed porpoise that they found?
Yes.
That's not a joke.
Did he go to space? I know, I saw a picture.
So how do you explain that? They didn't go to space.
Estrogen in the water.
Estrogen?
Yeah, it's affecting the fish. There's so much estrogen in the water.
I don't know about that.
Because of people, of birth control pills. Haven't you heard that? Fish are having human babies.
Or they're not.
Or not.
So, but my point is, sometimes there's weird anomalies that happen right here.
I know.
You don't have to go to space.
They studied 15,000 test worms, control worms, and this never happened. And then they send a couple of worms to space.
Okay, Phil.
And one of them comes back with 2 heads, all the others can no longer drink spring water.
I was going to ask you what your point is, but I don't think you have one. What was the point of the article?
The point of the article was, holy crap. That was really the point of the article.
Was that the subtitle?
No. Space travel leads to 2-headed worm. That was
holy crap. That's
the point of the article.
Okay.
We shouldn't go to space. So terrible things are going to happen if we go to space.
We should end all space exploration because of this.
No. Send robots to space. People don't,
because nothing bad happens with robots.
Well, but they can do it. That can happen to each other.
Did you hear about? There was a story in the Atlantic about an AI computer developing its own language to speak to another computer that the programmers didn't give it. So now it's like Skynet. They're beginning to talk to one another before they kill us all.
Holy crap!
Exactly.
That's another holy crap story.
So I don't think computers are going to save you from your fears.
But if we send them to space and they mutate and develop their own languages, which is, you're saying, the fear of robots.
I'm saying they gain intelligence.
If a robot goes to Mars, he's not going to hurt me because he's on Mars. Sky.
If they went to Mars, they can come back.
What?
No, they can't.
Look all I'm saying is you're basing all your fears on sci-fi movies, and I'm saying there's a lot of sci-fi.
I think you should watch other movies.
Yeah.
I think you should watch VeggieTales. It's time.
Oh yeah, I like.
Yeah, then he won't go to the produce aisle anymore.
If you like to. What if Larry had a head at each end?
What if it was like good Larry, evil Larry?
Yeah.
You just turn him upside down.
Because we sent him to space, because we cut the cucumber in half and sent him to space, and he grew heads on both ends, and he came back, and one would teach the Bible. What would the other teach?
That sounds like a Seth Rogen character.
I don't know what the other teach. The other would be a little humanist cucumber, a little Richard Dawkins, and they would fight each other. Wow. Did you see the Lego movie with Good Cop, Bad Cop?
Yes, I did.
His face flipped around?
Right.
Yeah.
That would be Larry.
That's what we're talking about.
He'd flip to his butt.
Yeah.
He'd be talking out of his butt.
Exactly.
Like his creator.
Yeah. Okay. That was fascinating. But it's interesting.
This is why people tune in, Phil.
That's why they tune in, and it's why they tune out. We get them coming and going like a 2-headed buttworm. Bernie Sanders.
Speaking of...
Bernie Sanders.
Sorry.
News. Joe's hanging up on us. We haven't even gotten to her yet, and she's already done with us.
No words. Carry on.
Okay.
Carry on.
Bernie Sanders, the unwitting star of liberal cluelessness on religion.
Holy crap.
So did you hear what Bernie Sanders, was that last week? Bernie
I
Sanders?
think it was last week, yeah.
Last week. He was, it was a mundane confirmation hearing for a Trump administration appointee. The appointee was Russ Vought? V-O-U-G-H-T?
Vote.
Or Vonot. A seasoned Republican policy hand nominated for Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Bernie Sanders took Vought to task for a 2016 blog post in which he defended his evangelical alma mater, Wheaton College, our own hometown school, for Go Thunder, for firing a tenured professor who said Muslims and Christians pray to the same God. Okay, we know about that story. We've talked about it on the
Larisha
podcast
Hawkins,
before.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Russ Vought was an alumni of Wheaton College, and he wrote a piece defending that decision. Bernie Sanders took him to task, said, wait a minute, do you want to be in the government and you defend the decision? Vought apparently wrote in a piece he wrote somewhere that Muslims, quote, stand condemned.
Okay.
I don't know if he said that, as do all of us.
Right.
I don't think he was saying there's some special place.
But he was making a theological point.
He was making a theological point that
those outside of Christ stand condemned.
Yeah, that in general, historical Christianity has had exclusivist claims. Can we say that? Can we go out on a limb and say historically,
yes,
Christianity has claimed exclusive truth?
Yes.
Okay. And that's what he said. And Sanders said, I wish to say, Mr. Chairman, that this nominee is really not something who this country is supposed to be about. First of all, which is grammatically terrible, but...
He is also from Queens, is he not? Brooklyn.
Yeah, I don't know.
Queens.
He's like Pa Grape. He's like Pa Grape running for president.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because this a piece is written by a liberal journalist, but defending religion kind of points out how out of touch Bernie Sanders was with the fact that most major religions make exclusivist claims,
right?
And it really hasn't destroyed American government to date to let Christians into the government.
Yeah, but there's a couple of other factors here.
What?
Well, one is that the Constitution explicitly forbids a religious test for public office. So for Bernie Sanders to be questioning an appointee on their theology and bringing up their theology as a reason not to appoint them to a position is actually unconstitutional, regardless of what the person's belief system is. But secondly, when he says this is not what America's about, ironically, it's exactly what America's about.
Yeah.
Because the First Amendment was about allowing people to hold unpopular beliefs without being persecuted. That's what the Bill of Rights was created to protect.
So what was
it wasn't about making sure we all agree with one another.
What is Bernie Sanders thinking?
I think he's appealing to his base, which thinks religious people are crazy.
Is it possible that because he's not a spring chicken? He's been around.
He's quite wilted.
He's been around, and he campaigned, so he went all the way across this great land of ours. He went to Iowa. He went everywhere.
Yeah.
He should have friends that are conservative religious folks, whether Muslim or Christian or Jewish. He should have conservative religious friends by now, shouldn't he?
I don't know.
How would this surprise him? Wait a minute. You don't think the Muslims will go to heaven with you?
That's what's so shocking about it.
Yeah.
A man at his age with his political pedigree and long experience in a diversity of environments should realize that there are a lot of people of a lot of different beliefs who think people of other beliefs are fatally wrong about some of their beliefs. And that's not new.
And therefore they should be disqualified from public office.
What's scary about it is it represents a shift from thinking that holding to an orthodox view of whether it's Christianity or Islam or Judaism or whatever, that holding to an orthodox view of religion makes you a bigot.
Yeah. Right.
That's what's frightening about the whole line of questioning, and the fact that a lot of people probably agreed with him.
Because he's not saying we can't have conservative Christians in government. He's saying we can't have bigots in government. And what he's not noticing is that this was just Orthodox Christianity that was being...
What this displayed is fundamentalist secularism rubbing up against fundamentalist religion.
Oh,
because the fundamental
that's good.
secularism says you can't have any exclusive claims.
Right.
So it was a fascinating little window into what's happening in the culture.
It is. Have you seen much of the follow-up? Are people saying, "Oh, he made a good point," or are more people saying, "Boy, he doesn't understand the First Amendment"?
The only stuff I've really seen has been written by religious believers who are saying he doesn't get it, and I think the rest of the country is oblivious to this story because they're so caught up with
Right.
Trump,
Trump, Russia.
all that stuff. It's just sucking all the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah, I've been having a hard time breathing. Okay, one last story before we get to Joe, but this will transition us nicely. Was this New York Times? Yeah, New York Times wrote a piece. Your rabbi, probably a Democrat. Your Baptist pastor, probably a Republican. Your priest, who knows?
This is like one of those dog bites man stories, isn't it?
No, this is the results of a massive study. A massive study. Now, the results are not surprising, but it's a massive study.
Who paid for it?
People.
I just want to know. I didn't pay for it.
I don't know. I'll just jump into it. America's pastors are even more politically divided than the rest of us, according to a new set of data representing the largest compilation of American religious leaders ever assembled. I think it was at Disney World, because that's the only place you can get pastors to all agree they want to go together.
Some don't.
Or Dallas.
There was that time back, was it the 90s, when the SBC, the Southern Baptist, boycotted Disney?
Yeah, but we've forgotten about that. That's all behind us now. Like their congregants, religious leaders have sharply divided themselves along political lines. Leaders and congregants of Unitarian and African Methodist Episcopal churches are overwhelmingly Democratic, as are those of Reform and Conservative Jewish synagogues. Those of several evangelical and Baptist churches are overwhelmingly Republican. Am I saying things that are shocking you, Sky?
I'm overwhelmed with shock, Phil.
If religious denominations were states, this is an interesting statement. If religious denominations were states, almost all of them would be considered safely Democratic or safely Republican, with relatively few swing states.
I want to know which denomination would be Rhode Island.
Is Rhode Island reliably Democratic?
Yeah,
I assume
so.
it is.
But it's really small.
It's really small. And then there's like 40. I think it would be, let's see, reliably Democratic but small would be UCC, United Church of Christ.
I have no idea.
How about that? Or Disciples of Christ, or American Baptists. Those are all small and reliably Democratic. What's the most reliably Republican denomination in this test? This surprised me.
Okay, I'm not looking.
The most reliably Republican denomination.
And this is for church leaders, not the people.
But yes,
leaders,
pastors.
Yeah. Okay. Is?
Wisconsin Lutherans. Wisconsin is a blue state. Except for this last time.
But the Lutherans in Wisconsin, apparently very
Aren't they
red.
all?
They're very, very red. Yeah, that's true.
This is Wisconsin. That's where Lutherans come from.
I think they came from Germany originally.
No, they came from Wisconsin. Some went back to Germany.
Okay.
Isn't that surprising? Fundamental Baptists are next.
They just own it. It's right there.
Missouri Synod Luther.
I think it's funny. A lot of churches
are
running away from the Baptist name. They're changing their name to get rid of Baptist. And these guys we are fundamentalist Baptists.
We're
just
doubling.
Exactly.
We're Baptist.
They're like the KFC sandwich that got rid of the bun and just put 2 slabs of fried chicken. Like we are just owning.
What does the chicken represent?
Fundamentalists, Baptists.
Oh, both?
Yeah.
In the same chicken?
Right.
That's some chicken. Okay, but here's the interesting part. Okay, what section of Christianity represents the swing state? The one
who's Ohio?
There is one. Yes. What section of Christianity is Ohio and is literally like 1/3 Republican leaders, 1/3 Democratic leaders, and 1/3 independent leaders?
Pentecostal churches?
No.
Okay.
No.
Roman Catholics.
Yes.
The Roman Catholics.
Yes.
I got it.
The Catholic
I had to
Church
think about that for a second.
And that's why the headline was, "Your priest? Who knows?"
Right.
What's even more interesting as you dig into it is that the political affiliation of the priests lines up quite closely with the political affiliation of the congregants in their parish.
That's not surprising.
What was surprising is that the congregants do not pick their priests.
Right.
The priests are assigned to the parish, which implies that there is some sort of institutional alignment between don't send him there, he won't politically line up with them.
Right. Yeah. There's and I'm
You
sure
think they do that?
I don't know if it's just about politics. It was probably cultural to say, let's put this priest into this parish because they understand this community and these people, and
so if you're sending a priest to Boston, you say make sure he's a Democrat. If you're sending a priest to rural Louisiana, you say make sure he's a Republican.
Probably.
So that's happening somewhere.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if it's that intentional.
Somewhere it's happening. Somewhere.
It might be more like, hey,
is there
folks down there really like NASCAR, and this priest really likes NASCAR. And by the way, they also are Republicans.
Does the Catholic Church have a bat cave where all these decisions are made?
It's called the Vatican.
But they just have shows there. They have big shows.
What are you talking about?
That's where they do the big festivals.
Well, fine, then the catacombs. They can be the bat cave.
There's got to be something, there's something underneath. Where there's big maps. Where are there big maps on the walls with blinking lights? And we got to send this guy to here and this guy to here. And then you have a new priest and you put him in.
Are you off your meds today? What is going on?
If you take 4 priests and you send them to space, how many come back?
Oh, my word.
Okay. Jo.
Hi.
You still with us?
Just about.
I have a question for you. Okay, so you were where were you born?
I was born in London.
You were born in London, lived there until you were how old?
30.
30?
No, actually lived in England until I was 30. Lived in London till I was 18.
Okay, and then Sheffield?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it Sheffield on the something? Because I love all the cities that are on the something in England.
There's a river, but it's just Sheffield.
Okay. Not Sheffield on the Glen?
No.
Sheffield on the...
I think it's the River Don. Oh. So it would be on the Don, which sounds weird. So Sheffield.
Yeah,
Sheffield on the toast.
So here's my first question for you. Growing up in the UK, and you grew up in church?
I became a Christian at 9.
Okay.
But my family were into a range of things.
Okay. Well, and then now you've been in the U.S. for a while. I don't want to reveal how old you may or may not now be, because I know
I'm 43. That's fine.
very sensitive. So don't tell us.
Yeah. It's all good.
Okay. Progressive in religion and conservative in religion as they relate to politics. Is it the same in the UK and the US, or is it completely different? How, because you're now seeing what's going on and how Christians tend to line up their politics, with their theology and kind of bind them together. Is there any of that same dynamic in the UK?
No. Not
Come on, we're trying to feel better about ourselves over here.
Sorry. I mean, I think this past year has been a bit of an earthquake for everybody. Do you know what I mean? But when I left the UK, I think, and my church background at that point anyway was an Anglican church and a Baptist church that joined together. It was of the evangelical and charismatic variety. There aren't many of us, so you kind of club together.
Wait, so you're an evangelical, charismatic, Anglican Baptist church?
Well, that one was, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I became a Christian in a Methodist church. I'm a bit Heinz 57 when it comes to this stuff.
That's fantastic.
So I think it was a slightly more left of center. I don't know. I couldn't say that would be true now.
Yeah.
But I think in the kind of, it was mainline denominations that we were part of. Very much, you were committed to the environment. You were committed to social justice. There was that kind of vibe, which was an integrated part of your Christian faith.
Yeah.
So when I landed here, and we got here 13 years ago, and we were in Arizona first, it was a bit of a shock. Actually, it was a bit of a shock. Some of the conversations that we had, and I mean, you live and learn, and it's. I guess I made some assumptions. So
Can you give an example?
I was surprised to be called a tree hugger because I believed in recycling. That was that was weird. I think the environment one was the most stark.
Yeah.
I think. Because I couldn't get my head around just. It was really easy to recycle. Do you know what I mean? It was just, it's not hard. It wasn't like deep in our souls.
And was there implied in that to care about the environment was somehow not consistent with Christian faith?
I think it at that time, in that moment, in the place we were in, I think it was assumed to be part of an interesting slope of a slippery nature. And so I think, and also, obviously, in England, there's universal healthcare. So then there was a kind of, what do you mean? What's it like? Kind of thing.
Right.
And that stuff.
Did they ask you how you survived to adulthood?
Yeah.
Yes, a little bit. There was a lot of gasping.
Did you explain how the Queen decides who lives and dies by flipping a royal coin?
No, I did talk about how she put out her royal scepter to select the children who would get to eat that day and live. But so I think politically, and also at that time we had more than 2 major parties.
In the UK.
In the UK. So you had the Conservatives, also, commonly known as the Tories, the Labour, and the Liberal Democrats. And so there was a lot. So I think that made it easier. I mean, I think now the political landscape's changed a lot. And so now it's just kind of it's just a confusing tension for everybody.
If you are a Bible-believing Christian in the UK, is there an assumption that you're going to be part of one specific political party?
No.
Really?
No.
You can
not like
you can
no,
pick?
not now. No.
Okay.
No. I think there's an assumption you won't be certain things.
Like a Muslim?
Well, possibly. I was thinking some of the more extreme parties.
Okay.
You probably would be assumed not to be there. But I think what I found fascinating every time I go back is that I have friends of all political persuasions, all looking with their mouths hanging out at America, and even the religious expression of things.
And what surprises them the most? What do they want to talk about?
I think I'm trying to think of the last time I was there and the questions people asked. They're like, some of it was, what on earth is happening? Will he really get elected? And I said, people who have Brexits probably can't throw stones at that. So, do you know what I mean? I think we're all in it together. I mean, you see your own blind spots. Well, you see what you perceive as other people's blind spots without seeing your own. But I think some of it would be more the how politicized faith has become here. I think that would be the main thing. Yeah. I think less than any particular figure, it would be that you could say God wants this person so confidently and so boldly. People would be like, I thought we separated those two things. It's not that people don't have preferences.
Wait, this is in a country with a national church? You're saying we thought we separated those things?
Oh, sorry. Anyway. But
that is the irony, is here we are, with a republic with a constitution that does not speak of God at all, that set up a separation of church and state. Yeah. And the church in England is scolding us about it
being too intertwined.
Exactly. That's kind of ironic.
I think it's more kind of I think England is a bit more introverted than that. So I think it would more tilt its head to the side and look at it in strange fascination.
Right.
Asking the question why, and perhaps mouthing, why is this still happening?
In a very passive-aggressive sort of way.
In that kind of, I'd like to be polite about it, but really,
right.
It doesn't. I remember years ago when Tony Blair and George Bush were in power, and the whole idea of someone feeling led, like be able to have a conversation about God in the midst of the political conversations and discussions, seemed really like off. People were like, well, why are you doing that? How does that work? So I think that feels quite alien still to some degree.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Did you, when you moved from Arizona, so you went from Sheffield on the Dern.
If you will. If it helps, Phil, have the Dern.
It helps me amazingly. To Arizona and then to Minnesota. Those I have some roots in Minnesota, so and that's good, sturdy Lutheran Swedish territory.
But it's a pretty liberal state.
It's a very very blue state,
unlike Wisconsin Lutherans, who apparently are incredibly conservative.
It's interesting. So what difference did you sense in American Christianity as you saw it in Arizona versus as you now see it in Minneapolis?
I mean, I think it's hard to say on one level because so many kind of seismic things have happened in that time. Like when we were in Arizona when in 2008 with the big crash and all that kind of stuff. Economically, we were in California for a while in between. California seemed like the easiest place to be, actually. That environment seemed to be where people were just a bit more laid back about it all, and where we were. I don't know what I think in Arizona it was. People were very the context we were in. Again, I have to speak to the context we were in. The context we were in, a lot of people were very upset about Obama getting elected. Very, very, like in mourning about it. And very explicit about their feelings. I mean, Phil, you'd speak to this better than I would. I think Minnesota's just a more introverted culture anyway. Yeah. So it probably doesn't say as much. Right. It's like Arizona feels like when the Minnesotans got loud. And then,
Yeah, Arizona is full of loud Minnesotans.
Right. Well, in Minnesota, they got to conserve their heat and energy, and so much escapes from your mouth.
You got to keep it inside.
You got to keep it inside. Keep it warm, friends. Keep it warm.
It's the land of Garrison Keillor.
That's right.
It's Lake Wobegon. Okay, let's back up because you're part of something called 3D Movements that started out of, was it your church in Sheffield?
Yes, I was on the staff of the church at the time, and it actually began when we got here, but the things that we share and teach and train on was formulated in the crucible of our lives in Sheffield.
I love.
This is Mike Breen, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mike Breen, who's Mike Breen.
He was.
Do I know him?
Well, he was a senior pastor of St. Thomas's at the time. At the time when we were exploring all these things that we still use.
And was it St. Thomas's on the anything or just St. Thomas's?
It was St. Thomas's Church. I'm sorry. On a hill. Maybe we could have said on the hilltop.
I like that. That's good. And you talked about this movement beginning basically as a response to being a church in a post-Christian culture and needing to find a new way to interact with your culture. I'm assuming in that sense, you would probably see England as not radically different than the U.S., but further ahead, more, where you might say, oh, maybe that's what we look like in 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think when we first moved here and when we were in Arizona and other places, people used to say to us, the kind of stuff you're talking about would be great for the West. Take it to Washington, take it to Seattle, take it to Oregon. Okay. No one's saying that anymore. No. So I think 13 years ago, it was seen as this would be great if you were doing church in San Francisco and all that. Now it tends to be a greater awareness that things have shifted.
Okay, so what did you have to do in Sheffield at Pooh's Corner to make this? I need it to sound more A.A. Milne. What did you learn to do there to bring Jesus back into a post-Christian culture that you wanted to try in other places?
Yeah, I think what it began with was Sheffield historically had a great, there are these massive church buildings because they were actually filled at one point and Wesley had preached to thousands there and stuff like that. But I think by the time all this stuff began for us in the 90s, the city was maybe 2% would be found in church on a Sunday.
Wow.
Maybe one of those percent would say they were actually believed in being there. And I think it was the recognition that it didn't matter how wonderful your church service was, no one was coming. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you can have a really great band, but we have Coldplay. Do you know what I mean? It's like no one cares. Right. And it wasn't even that people were hostile. It was beyond hostile. When you're indifferent because you've got over your feelings. Yep. People weren't up in their feelings about the church anymore. They'd gone way past that.
It was apathy.
It was apathy, inertia, and everything. And I think some of it was us asking ourselves, what does it mean to grow by people actually coming to know Jesus?
That seems like a good question to ask.
Yeah, and what does it mean? And it was a college town, so you did attract people just because it was people who moved there for college and stuff like that. But what would it look like to reach the city in some way, if we're building lovely things and no one's coming, which was the case, do you know what I mean? No one was coming to your fancy events. Then what did it look like to go to the city? What did it look like to worship God, reflecting the different, I guess, I mean, you know, England does hymns and we have a wonderful amount of them, but not everybody wants to sing them beyond soccer games. And so what did it look like to make the gospel accessible? We didn't feel like we needed to make it relevant. We needed to make it accessible.
Okay.
What did that look like?
What did it look like?
Oh, yeah. In practice?
Yes.
Well, in practice, it looked like, a lot of mistakes, to be brutal. Is this working? No.
Okay.
But it was what we described, what are now commonly described as missional communities. So people who are maybe a group of maybe 20 to 50 people, friendship groups, or all gathered around the same vision for a neighborhood, a network of relationships, or a need. I do love my alliteration. Oh, makes me happy. And so a group of people who were looking at saying, you know, I really care about this neighborhood. And they either moved into the same neighborhood and they'd find ways in which they could invite people into their lives. Yep. Everybody's got to eat. So they did a lot around meals. Some people who were passionate about what does it look like to be healthy Christians with social skills in the workplace. And so they would hold professional events together. They'd club together and they'd hold them in bars and stuff like that. Networking events that would be hosted by that community.
So wait, neighborhood, networks, needs.
And needs.
Okay.
I mean, I think in the early years, it was mainly neighborhood and network. Somewhere around soccer games, because that is England's true religion. That is the thing that people will get up and there was an ad which was like, at the time, which was like, we call it football, obviously. They said football is not a religion. It's way more important than that. And so a lot of the guys built their missional communities around their soccer teams. And basically, I remember one of the guys saying, you know, the measure of a man by how he plays on the field or how he plays on the pitch. And it was like, you know, when someone's calling your mother all kinds of fruitful names, will you get up and punch that guy, or will you live differently? Right. When everybody else is because with England, you go to a game, you play in the game, you abuse each other virulently, then you go and have a curry, have lager, throw it all up and start all over again. And so what does it look like?
All those indie British movies are actually true.
Oh, yeah. That's life. Yeah. And so for those guys who built missional communities around their soccer games, they would hang out together, but they wouldn't get drunk. They'd be the designated drivers. They wouldn't punch people out on the soccer field. And it actually, the fun thing about when you try and be Jesus, it's actually quite attractive. And people were interested in that sort of stuff. And it took a long time for us to work out how to do those sorts of things. But in some ways, it was putting more of our energy into what it looked like in the week in everyday life and not exclusively on a Sunday.
Okay, so that raises a question, which is, everything you're describing sounds great, and I'm sure there's people in church leadership who are listening to this going, amen, we'd love to have our people engaging and being like Jesus out in the community. What did you as church leaders have to stop doing in order to put more emphasis on that kind of missional engagement? What did you have to sacrifice, or what did you have to give up on in order to find the time and resources to actually empower people to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a brilliant question. I mean, I think in our case, desperation is always helpful. So, but I think some of the things we had to stop doing was the commitment. See, how we viewed excellence, I think, was key. I think there was a tendency to view excellence as if we present something really beautiful, and we invest all our time, our money and resources to having the shiniest people doing the shiniest things, then that's our win. What we had to give up was our definition of excellence and shift it towards the most excellent thing is to invest in people, to invest in and to relinquish power, to relinquish us being the one with all the ideas, to relinquish us always needing to look like the most learned and the best, to relinquish locking ourselves in our offices and calling it work, rather than being in the community. I think we had to, those were some of the things, and we had to be content with it being messy for a long while. which and those were some. I mean, again, it's a different culture, because I think in this context you can still get people to come to church. In England, you can't, because no one cares. So those were some of the things that we had to do. We had to be prepared to invest in lay leaders to the point that they were doing that they could do anything and everything within the life of the church. Some of us stepped down from our full-time roles and went part-time to free up resources at certain times in our lives. Some of us went and got jobs within the wider community, so that because often for the church leader, the issue is often proximity. They haven't spoken to a non-Christian for years.
Right.
Because they ain't got friends.
No, that's true. I mean, it's so easy when you're in a church leadership role to completely isolate yourself from
and you didn't start out that way. You didn't plan to do it, but it happened.
So you mentioned desperation making it easier for you to relinquish some of that, your view of excellence and power and control and all that. In your experience here in the United States, is the church here desperate enough to make those kinds of changes?
Some yes, some for a while, some no. I think when we first moved to Arizona, we moved at the invitation of a church who some wonderful people who'd done some wonderful things in a particular era and had watched the culture around them change, and they loved the idea. That some of them had come to our church, seen all this happening with young adults in particular. Gen Xers, weren't we wonderful? And then they invited us over. And I think the challenge for them was, this doesn't feel like what we're used to. This isn't anything like we're used to. I know if I can put on an event like I used to, we could have 10,000 people here, or 6,000 people here, or 2,000, you know how numbers go. We could have people in the room. And so it was weird for them to say, just because you've got those people sitting on your chairs doesn't actually mean you're making disciples. It just means you've got them in the room.
Well, don't burst their bubble. That's kind of
but it didn't go well.
What you're describing, I've seen in a number of contexts I've been in, which is you describe what quote unquote missional ministry looks like, the empowerment, the incarnation of the gospel in the community, all these different things, and everyone resonates with it, and everyone says that's great, absolutely. We love it, we want to do that, come on over and help us do it. But then when they begin to realize what they have to relinquish, that's where they stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be a month in, it can be years in.
There you go.
But that's what I mean. It seems like a lot of these places have to reach that level of desperation where they're finally willing to say, okay, I will give up the power and control and shiny, happy, excellent ministry I've been doing in order to actually make disciples.
And honestly, sometimes it's not the senior pastor, sometimes it's the community.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, hold on a second, you've just changed the game. You've told us we can come here. We don't have to give any money. We don't have to sing. We don't have to be involved. You are our spiritual therapist. When did you change the game on us? And I've in the times we've worked with churches over the years, the churches that made the most, like the most severe right turn on this, or the severe kind of shift in this, didn't often survive because it was too much. It's like we're all discipling people. It's just the way we're doing it. That's the issue.
Right.
So if you've discipled people into saying that you are the person who feeds them, don't be surprised that they feel starved when you stop teaching. You know what I mean?
So based on that, then would you recommend actually trying to turn a church in a different direction, or is it better just to start a new ministry that has this kind of embedded in its values from the get-go?
$60 million question, that one. And it's not made me $60 million yet. I would say it depends. I think I've seen both work. I've seen both fail. I think you've really got to know your people. You've got to know your denominational history, because to be brutally honest, in every denomination started some vibe like this, where a group of committed people who were passionate about something, who wanted to try something new, who wanted to reach beyond, did this stuff. So it's not new at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's as old as Luther, it's as old as Wesley, it's as old as.
So what you're saying is you're launching a new denomination, and what we really need to know is it Republican or Democrat?
Yeah, I'm not saying that at all.
What another big thing out of this is trying to still disciple people, though. If it's
absolutely,
if it's that informal, if it's it's on the soccer pitch and it's in a pub and it's wherever, can you be intentional about discipleship when you're that informal?
Yes, you can, because alongside those missional pieces, and again, we learned this as we went, which meant that we made a lot of mistakes and got a lot of things wrong, which can be a painful teacher. Is that I think for us at certain points, it was growing so fast, we missed that bit. In all honesty, Phil, we missed it, and then we realized actually we needed to adopt. When you look at how Jesus did stuff, he did gather a group of people and had a regular rhythm with them. So we developed what we called huddles, because we're not good at names, and that was the only name we could come up with, of maybe 6 to 8 people who were leaders or intentional future leaders or committed to go exploring this stuff further. And you basically, it's not original. It's what Wesley did, what he did with the class meeting. And he used to have this list of 50 questions asking them about their faith, their passion, their mission. And then the last question, which was, which of these questions did you just lie about? And because he was hardcore. And so we did a similar kind of thing, asking each other. You'd have a huddle leader, and they'd gather that group maybe for 1 hour, either once or twice a month, and ask them. And we didn't stop doing the Sundays. We just didn't invest in the same kind of. We didn't hang everything on it.
Right.
And so in different seasons of the year, we'd have to back off one of the things, because you can't. People have got jobs. And so that would be our discipling forum, because I think, again, we had to look at how Jesus did discipleship. And it wasn't just teaching. It was life on life. It was interactive. There was a depth to it. And we just wanted to make sure we had it's like if you're baking a chocolate cake. If you don't have chocolate in it, it ain't a chocolate cake. I mean, it might be a real nice cake, but it ain't a chocolate cake.
Okay, I understand the cake part of the analogy.
I guess what I'm saying is, if you want to have a disciple, if you want to make disciples, do it the way Jesus did it. If you take out some of the ingredients, don't expect the same results. Okay,
so the chocolate in this scenario is the life on life.
Chocolate is. The irony is, I actually hate the taste of chocolate, so it's a really bad illustration, really.
Great.
For me,
this is not
personally.
Going well at all.
I guess what I'm saying is, discipleship includes teaching for sure, but it includes living examples of that teaching, people fleshing it out in their life. Often, and it also includes mission. The way Jesus did discipleship, it wasn't like, when you're really good and you've got everything down, then you do mission. You did it as you go. And I think different denominations and different groups of people are really good at some of them and weaker at the others.
Yeah.
And so some of us may default to the discipleship is purely in the context of our Sunday morning teaching. And I would say it's partly that. But is there anybody I mean, I didn't grow up in a context where I had parents who could teach me the gospel. So when people talked about money or what marriage looked like, I had no living examples of that. I needed it fleshed out in people's lives. And you can't get that from a 20-minute talk. You just can't. You can tell me that I shouldn't sleep around.
That's why I preach for 40 minutes.
How'd that work for you? Do you see what I mean? It's a holistic thing. When we look at how Jesus did discipleship, it was holistic. And I guess what we were learning to do, and frankly, still are learning, is how to do holistic discipleship, knowing that leads to mission.
Okay, Jo Saxton. People want to learn more. Oh, that's fantastic, Joe. I want to learn more. Where do I go? What do I do?
You want to go to the 3D Movements website, 3dmovements.com.
Okay, and it's 3D Movements with an S. There's more than one. It's not just a 3D movement.
Yeah, God's doing lots of things, I guess.
Are all of our movements 3D?
The reason why it's called three-dimensional is it reflects the 3 dimensions we see in Jesus' life: his relationship with God, his relationship with people, his relationship with the world. So that's
fantastic. Well, I was wondering if it was the God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It was like the.
I mean, that's there too.
And the Holy Spirit was on the Z-axis.
That's still heresy, because God doesn't have different dimensions.
He doesn't have axes?
No.
He's a point?
He is one.
He is one. He is outside of time. Shamalama ding dong.
Oh my.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. We will put a link to your website.
Thank you.
And you have your own website too, right? Because you're like a speaker and a what else are you?
I am. I do speak. I do leadership coaching in church and corporate context, that stuff.
Fantastic. And that's at josaxton.com?
josaxton.com.
We'll link to that too, because then you could come out and then you could get all this excited at somebody's business or church, giving them...
That'd be lovely.
Telling them they need to shut their church down. Yeah, sounds like it'll be fun. Let me summarize this. There's a lady I'm really glad I know. Her last name is Saxton. Her first name is Jo. And she tells us that we need to yield every time we want to be Jesus on the soccer field. So let's all take a turn in our churches like at Sheffield on the Dern. So we can go to church the way we learned about from Jo. She's my favorite Londoner from Sheffield by way of Arizona, California, and Minnesota Lutheran with... are you in a denomination right now?
Lutheran will do, yeah.
Okay, Lutheran is just fine for her because discipleship can't just happen on Sundays. Jo will help you learn how to do it on Mondays and Tuesdays. And if you want to take all your friends to a much better place, then just cut off their heads and send them all into space. Okay, because they come back with 2 heads, and that's better than 1.
Not if you don't have a tail.
Oh, rats. Okay, don't do that. Scratch that idea. That was a bad idea. Jo, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Jo.
Thank you.
Fantastic once again. Sky, your book is still out?
It is still out.
Have you sold
Yay.
out? Do you need to print more yet, or there's still more?
Not yet. There's more to be had.
There's more that we can buy.
And guys, if you've gotten the book, I seriously need you to put a review on Amazon.
What if they didn't like it? Still do a review?
Still put a review on Amazon.
Okay.
I need reviews on Amazon.
Need reviews on Amazon.
Yeah, and
Sky needs reviews on Amazon.
And we're cooking on the bulk orders for like churches and schools and stuff like that. So
we're cooking on the Bulk, which is the other city in England that Jo lived in very briefly.
Cooking on the bulk.
Cooking on the
You know,
bulk.
all this talk
Kevin?
about chocolate cakes and her accent, I was just thinking about the Great British Baking Show. I've been hooked on that thing.
I have never
Fabulous.
watched.
Isn't that great? Yeah,
It is wonderful.
Do you watch American TV, and is there any that's as good as British TV?
Oh, gosh. Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking.
Okay, because where you're looking is another place.
I'm
I was
sorry.
confused.
I'm
no,
sorry.
it's okay. I love Suits. I loved The West Wing. I love Grey's Anatomy.
Okay.
All things Shonda. Yeah, lots of things. Lots of amazing TV.
Okay. Cool. So it doesn't have to be from the BBC to meet your high standards of
No, it does not.
literary
It does not.
genius. Okay. Cool. We will be back next week. We know who our guest is, right? Who's our guest next week? I don't even know who that is. What did you say?
Don't admit that.
I didn't hear the name.
Oh.
Louder.
Svensson.
Joey Svensson.
One of the hosts of the Bad Christian Podcast.
Oh, right. One of the hosts of the Bad Christian Podcast. We'll be on the show next week.
Exciting.
So come on back. We'll see you then. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
The Phil Fisher Podcast is produced by Phil Fisher Enterprises and recorded live at Jellyfish Lab Studios. This episode was edited by Jason Rugg and was fact-checked by absolutely no one. For more information, go to philfisher.com.